Gloomy Wednesday in the city of Toronto, but we are joined by our ray of sunshine, Steven Psihogios of NorthStar Bets. Stevie, big night in the NHL. Leafs, Lightning, Oilers, Stars, massive matchups across the board. But we are going to start with a sport that's very near and dear to our heart, football, more particularly the NFL. Draft is coming up at the end of April, but the Houston Texans are already making some major moves. Last year, they got it right. Will Anderson, D'Amico Ryans, and of course, CJ Stroud. What do? They change the culture of a dumpster fire in Houston. They win the division. They win a playoff game against the Cleveland Browns. And now, what do? They get Danielle Hunter from the Minnesota Vikings on defense. And today, they get Stephon Diggs from your Buffalo Bills. The total compensation was Diggs, a fifth rounder, and a sixth rounder to Houston, and a second round pick in 2025 to the Buffalo Bills. We're going to attack it from a Bills perspective in just a second. But Stevie, according to NorthStar Bets, the Texans are now the favorite to win the NFC South, and they also are in the top 5 of best odds to win the AFC. How does this move position Houston amongst the other teams in the AFC?
Well, at North Star Bets, they have the fifth best odds to win the AFC. I'd put them top three because you look at this division, and this is the easiest division in the conference. This is the AFC. You look and compared to the NFC, it's no contest. It's the more competitive division. But the AFC South does have some teams that have some holes. You have the Jaguars. It's hard to tell whether they're here or there. The reviews are mixed on Trevor Lawrence through his first 3 years in the NFL. You've got another team in the Tennessee Titans who are one of the most forgettable franchises in the NFL. Sometimes I'm thinking about the AFC South. I forget what that fourth team is in that division. They're so forgettable, the Titans. Maybe Will Levis turns into something for them, but I don't know. And then, of course, you have the Indianapolis Colts who, okay, they look like they're on the upswing. They were fighting for that division all year long. They'll get Anthony Richardson back, but we haven't seen Richardson do it for a full season, especially nowhere near the level that CJ Stroud delivered at in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
So Houston, because of the division and the fact that they will be able to bank some wins against some lesser opponents, I think has to be top three. You look at the Chiefs, that division's getting tougher. The Chargers seem to be turning things around with that program. The Raiders, they're always pesky. Last year they split with the Chiefs. And it's Denver, too. It's a hard place to win at. Not as bullish on Denver as the other three, but then you go to the AFC East, the Bills, the Dolphins, the Jets. They seem to be rallying around what could be Aaron Rodgers' last season in the NFL. So it's another tough division. The AFC North, we don't even have to touch on that. They had 3 playoff teams from that last year, and it only got more difficult to win in that division. So when you look at it as a whole, it's a perfect fit for the Texans. But really, it bolsters their odds as one of the top contenders in the AFC.
1000%, Stevie. Look, this is exactly what smart organizations do. When you have a quarterback like CJ Stroud, who solidified himself, now he's going to have to back it up this year, but he's a slam dunk top 10 quarterback, right? He proved that as a rookie.
Yeah.
Had he not gotten hurt, he probably would have broken all the rookie passing records. He showed what they were missing with Deshaun Watson, an adult, a CEO, a guy who can really run a franchise. People question whether he could move. He proved he could move. He has the arm talent. He has the leadership capabilities, right? He has the charisma to be a number one guy. They got Tank Dell in the third round, and he was balling before he got hurt. Nico Collins is no slouch either. Both of those guys are, can have the talent to be elite playmakers. And that's the thing with Stephon Diggs. When you add him, a big personality, a guy who, since he went to Buffalo, led the league in catches and yards and all that stuff, he doesn't need to be the alpha guy in that wide receiver room. Now, that could be a blessing for him, but it also has to be an adaptation change for him. He has to understand that, look, I'm not the main character here. I have to be a veteran, and show these young wide receivers how to be a professional, how to be the right way. And I think he can do that. I think that over the last year and a half, his relationship in Buffalo soured a lot. And I'm sure we're going to get more and more details as to why. But this move for the Houston Texans, they're striking while the iron's hot. They're striking before they know that in a couple of years, they're going to have to pay CJ Stroud a whole lot of money. They're going to have to pay Will Anderson a whole lot of money. They're probably going to have to pay either Tank Dell or Nico Collins if they continue on this trajectory as well. What the Houston Texans are doing are saying, look, like exactly what you just said. We play in a division where Trevor Lawrence, for all the talent and the skill he's had, is he really a top 10 quarterback? Like, that's a legitimate question. Do we know if Trevor Lawrence has the intangibles? He's got the tools, but does he have the intangibles to be an elite quarterback? I like Anthony Richardson a lot. I think he's more of a project. I think he has potential to really pop off this year and really become an elite quarterback. But the Colts don't have a whole lot of weapons besides Michael Pittman. They don't have the horses like the Houston Texans do. And then, of course, the Tennessee Titans, they have Will Levis, and then they have expensive wide receivers that are old in Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins. I don't know about their new head coach that are bringing in. I liked Mike Vrabel a lot, and they're clearly rebuilding. So when I look at the landscape of the AFC, Kansas City is going to be there. Baltimore is going to be there. But you're right. I think the Houston Texans, alongside the Cincinnati Bengals, are with the Ravens and the Chiefs are the four teams that really, I think, have the best shot of representing the AFC in the Super Bowl this year. All those teams, what do they have? Elite quarterbacks, good weapons, good coaches, good cultures, right? That is what I think is what the key to success is in the NFL. And here's the thing: the Texans have the ability now to eat that $18 million cap hit because they're not paying their quarterback anything. So this was a slam dunk move for the Houston Texans.
Yeah, this is the time to pay or bring in that highly paid wide receiver, right?
Mhm.
It was when Buffalo made that move for
Absolutely.
Stephon Diggs because you had Josh Allen still on his rookie deal. But hey, when that comes into effect, we've seen it with every team pretty much who
Mhm.
has a number one wide receiver. They get moved. Devontae Adams got moved. Once, Rodgers was still making good money, but he wanted an extension. And then Adams gets
AJ
moved.
Brown.
And then you have A.J. Brown. You have Tyreek Hill with the
Mhm.
Kansas City Chiefs. It's the same deal, right? Like these top end wide receivers. It's great when you're not paying your quarterback all that money, but once you're basically paying a second quarterback
Yeah.
in your number one wide receiver, it becomes a lot tougher to make that happen. So it was a move where Buffalo had to move on. They were in cap trouble this
Mhm.
offseason. It was well documented. They lost a lot of key players.
They did.
But this is a move, I think, for Houston is perfect. And Stephon Diggs, he's going to have to get used to not being the number one guy. There's lots of times where you'd see him frustrated on the sidelines in
Mhm.
Buffalo because he wasn't getting the football. That might be
Yeah.
the case this year. There's more target competition there. Buffalo never really had a guy step up as a number two wide receiver. You have a guy in Nico Collins who was the number one last year and a very good number one by the numbers. And then Tank Dell, when healthy, that guy is a speed demon. He's all over the field. So they have the weapons, and Diggs has to be okay saying, hey, maybe today's not going to be my game. And maybe, you're going to have a few games in a row where it's not your game because the
Mhm.
matchups dictate open wide receivers all over the field, whether it's Collins or whether it's Dell. It's not always going to
Mhm.
be a Diggs game. So we'll see how he adjusts to that. And that can be a tricky thing, though, with a young quarterback, too. They'll have to make sure that he doesn't get too vocal and feel like he's taking the team over from Stroud.
1000%. And let's go to the Buffalo point of view. You mentioned they were in cap hell. They've been in cap hell. They've been pushing money down and down and down. And now it's finally, Uncle Sam is coming. You got to, reap the bill. Um, who the hell is Josh Allen going to throw the ball to? You have Kincaid, you have Dawson Knox, you know, James Cook was, good last year. But on the outside, who are they going to throw the ball to? Curtis Samuel? Shakir?
Look,
Right? Like, that's the
yeah,
biggest question now. What do the Buffalo Bills do uh, on offense?
I imagine the Bills are going to trade up and draft a wide receiver or sit where they are if there's a wide receiver that falls to that round or
Mhm.
that range of the draft and take one there. They have the picks now after this trade, and they had a lot of picks beforehand to move up if they'd like. But I actually really do like the moves they've made this offseason at the position, mainly being the addition of Curtis Samuel. I think that's a good wide receiver. That's someone who really hasn't played with a strong quarterback. Samuel
Mhm.
was in Washington with Howell and just a whole bunch of random Taylor Heineke's and
Yeah.
this and that. Like it was real
Jacoby
ugly
Brissett.
there. And in
Yeah.
Carolina, it was no better, right? And he still had some really productive years. He can kind of be that Swiss Army knife, like a Debo Samuel light.
Mm.
That's one guy I really like, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he does in Buffalo's offense. But no question, they got to add a wide receiver. They lose Davis, they lose Diggs. Those are, if you add it all up, that's probably close to 40-50% of Buffalo's target share and Buffalo's air yard share from last year. So that's a big vacancy to be left open. I definitely would not be surprised if they even went wide receiver in the first and second round, because the rest of the roster really isn't in that poor of shape. So I think that could be a position where you could see Buffalo maybe even double tap in the draft.
I think Buffalo lost a whole lot of key pieces, especially in their secondary this offseason as well. Is it a season where it's kind of like the Rams, not this year, but the year before, where they kind of not it's a retool year, right? You recoup a whole lot of draft assets, right, over these next 2 seasons. You get a lot of young players back in the building, and then you still have Josh Allen, who's still in his prime, and you go for it. I don't see the Bills as currently constructed, even with a bunch of young players, being in the position they were last year, hosting the Kansas City Chiefs in a playoff game where they should have won. Like, I think it was evident that was last year was that Bills team's best chance to win. And now they're going to have to go through a bit of a retool, a bit of a readjustment, a bit of shuffling of the cards before they get back to it. I think Miami is the clear-cut leader for this division. I would put the Jets above the Bills right now. The only thing that's hesitant on the Jets is knowing that it's the Jets and there's always going to be drama around there. But I don't know if the Bills even make the playoffs this year, right? Just looking at it right now, look at how deep I think, a team like Pittsburgh, they made the playoffs last year, right? They're going to be a little bit better. I think every team in the AFC North I think the AFC North is going to have 4 playoff teams, right? I legitimately could see that because they are so loaded, that division. Joe Burrow is going to be back healthy. Lamar's back. Cleveland's only going to be a year better. And of course, Pittsburgh is always going to be sniffing around there. So I just don't see a scenario where the Bills can make the playoffs, because also when I look at the AFC West, Jim Harbaugh is doing a wonderful job, right? Rebuilding that roster. And they're going to be competitive. I think the Broncos will be better once they draft Bo Nix. And honestly, I think the Raiders are going to get their quarterback in the draft. I think the Raiders are a team that are going to trade up in this draft and get their franchise quarterback, whether that's on Michael Penix or a Jaden Daniels from LSU. So when I look at the Bills, I'd say, take a year. Just don't punt it, but don't go all in. Recoup some draft assets, retool, refresh, and then you have a great quarterback. You're going to be fine, right? But just retool the rest of the roster.
I don't think Buffalo can do that. I really don't think they can afford to do it. I mean, you've gone this deep now into Josh Allen's prime, and you've only sniffed like one AFC title game. Like, it really hasn't been as successful as a time period as it should have been. And now, of course, you got to eat the Diggs dead cap for this year, but I think you have to still play for this season. It's a dangerous game to get into because if you take one step back and all of a sudden you're Josh Allen, you're sitting there like, I'm getting close to 30 now, and I still haven't had that team success I thought I was going to have. And do I have faith that this team, this management group, can put the pieces around me to win a title? It's tough. It's tough. Buffalo has missed and squandered some opportunities that have now put it in a tougher spot. But we had similar conversations, albeit they've had success already. We had similar conversations about the Chiefs going into last year, saying, how are they going to make things happen? But look, they hit on some really key draft picks, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Looking at guys like Trent McDuffie, who've really stepped up and played big part been a big part of that success in Kansas City. Now it's Buffalo's front office's turn. They've got the draft picks. They've got the capital. Go out and make it happen. Go out and win the draft and make some good picks and put that young talent around Josh Allen. Because if I was Allen, I would start looking at the clock and saying, when are we going to build a team? Like, now you've shipped out my number 1 wide receiver. You didn't sign my number 2 wide receiver. And I'm going into this year with Curtis Samuel as my number 1. Come on. Let's get things going here. I think he has a reason to be a little ticked off. And I think that's why you can't play too many waiting games, because franchise quarterbacks like that don't come around often.
I agree 1,000%. It's going to be exciting to see what the draft entails. There's definitely going to be a whole lot more moving and shaking going on in the NFL. Let's switch gears to hockey tonight. Toronto Maple Leafs taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Both teams are 3-5 in their last 3-2 in their last 5 games. The Leafs are coming off a 6-4 win over the Florida Panthers. They got way too close for a lot of Leaf fans liking after the Panthers scored 3 consecutive goals in the third period. Seeing what you saw on Monday night and now going into a game against Tampa where they came across a tough loss against the Boston Bruins. I've said the Detroit Red Wings, my Eastern Conference teams mixed up. What do you see shaking down tonight? Do you see another good Leafs performance for 40 minutes, continue on? Or do you see a desperate Tampa team who's only 6 points back with 2 games still against Toronto really put the pedal to the metal against the Leafs?
Well, you mentioned it's gloomy in the Toronto area today. It's cloudy, it's wet. I'm thinking there's going to be some lightning later in the
Ooh.
evening.
Woo!
I like the Tampa Bay Lightning to win tonight. I'm
Mhm.
betting them at plus 107 on the money line over at NorthStar Bets. This team is firing on all cylinders. Look out. This is the team you want to avoid in round one. It's not the Vegas Golden Knights. It's not the Nashville Predators. And it surely isn't the Los Angeles Kings. The team right now in a wild card spot or in the wild card hunt that you want to avoid is the Tampa Bay Lightning. They've won
Mhm.
8 of their last 10 games. Okay, not bad. What the scariest part about this run is the fact that Andrei Vasilevsky's got his mojo back. His last 9 starts, he's 7-1-1 with a 926 save percentage. That is not good. That is not good. The Maple Leafs, they fought tooth and nail going to overtime 3 times with Tampa Bay last year in the first round
Mhm.
against an Andrei Vasilevsky who couldn't stop a beach ball. Now, this guy is back to the form that we remember him being when the Lightning were on their cup runs, and that is a scary development. So I really like Tampa Bay to win tonight. The Leafs, they beat a Florida team that's heading in the opposite direction. They've really been struggling, the
Mhm.
Panthers. This Tampa Bay team's coming in hot. I think they punched the Maple Leafs in the mouth tonight and really show them that they're one of the teams that you do not want to mess with.
Yeah, no, look, I'm looking at the Lightning's just their player stats right now. Of course, Kucherov has got 127 points. He's your guy to win the Art Ross, which I'm still gonna ask you again in a couple minutes on if you still are on that. But then Braden Point, 42 goals this year. Victor Hedman has 71 points, Stevie, in 71 games. Like he's back.
Yeah.
Victor Hedman is that guy, right? Brandon Hagel's got 23 goals, and Steven Stamkos quietly 31 goals for Steven Stamkos this season. The Lightning, exactly this. I think last year they got tired. They were a team that was came off back-to-back Stanley Cup Finals. They played a whole lot of playoff time, and they got a little bit of a longer, a break. And you're seeing this team ramp it up. Matt Dumba's been playing almost 20 minutes a game for the Tampa Bay Lightning since he's been acquired. He's no Mikhail Sergachev, but he's a guy that can play that style of hockey. I agree with you. I think the Lightning, regardless if they win or lose tonight, they're a team that's going to push a team in the first round, whoever they play. And I think it's probably going to be either Florida or Boston. And I would not be surprised if they win a first round series and they make it back to the conference finals whatsoever. Because, like you mentioned it, that guy, number 88 in net, is playing like that guy we've seen before. When he's on the top of his game, he's so big, Stevie. He's so in control. He covers up the entire net. There's going to be no situation. It's not going to be the same situation as last year where Vasilevsky is going to get outdueled by Ilya Samsonov in a first round. That's not going to happen. He's going to be, a guy that's going to go into either Boston or Florida and steal games. He's done it before and he'll do it again. So,
Yeah, and
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say an abnormal offseason for him
Yeah.
too. It's just taking him time to ramp up.
Like they could catch lightning in a bottle once again and go on a run. Like it would not surprise me at all. If you did a poll across any hockey fan across the NHL, would you be surprised if the Tampa Bay Lightning end up in the conference finals or even the Stanley Cup finals? Would not shock me one bit at all because they have the guys that even a guy like Sorelli, even a guy like Connor Sherry, who's done it before with Pittsburgh. All these guys, these depth pieces that rise up in the playoffs. And again, John Cooper is such a good coach. We don't talk about it enough
Yeah.
because he coaches in Tampa. But when it comes to playoff time and it comes to making adjustments and it comes to motivating and playing those mind games in the media, there's nobody like John Cooper, right? I believe that
No.
regardless if the Leafs win tonight or not, like that's irrelevant. The Tampa Bay Lightning are the bigger story tonight.
Yeah, I think so. What you see
Mm,
from Tampa Bay, I watched them play Boston last week and push the Bruins around.
yeah.
It really they physically overwhelmed Boston. They were hitting Marchand, they were hitting anything that moves, basically saying, "We're not intimidated by you. This is still our division."
Mhm.
And that's a scary thing. When you got a team that has that success and isn't that far removed from it either. They were in the Cup final just 2 years ago. Like
Yeah.
this is not a team that has been out of the limelight for very long. It was 1 year, an early exit, which I actually think did the Lightning a world of
Mhm.
good. And Vasilevsky, as we mentioned, is starting to ramp it up. But there's one small narrative too that I think is driving this team, and that's the fact that this could be Steven Stamkos' last year with the Bolts. The contract
Ah,
situation is very uncertain after this year. We don't know what's going to happen with Stamkos. He was
yeah.
pretty vocal about it too in camp, being unpleased that they still hadn't reached the deal. So this could be a galvanizing thing for this team. If Stamkos is heading on the way out, that kind of signals the end of an era in Tampa Bay. They could be a little extra motivated to make a run here. I wouldn't be shocked if the Lightning won the Cup this year. They're my preseason pick. I'm
Yeah.
not going back from that now. So if the Lightning win the Stanley Cup, don't be surprised. They have the horses to do what it takes. The Dumba edition, fantastic. That
Mhm.
guy, all he does is step up and play hard in big games. He
Yep.
wasn't getting any of that with the Coyotes. You added a guy in Anthony Duclair who just went to the Stanley Cup final and gave that team a
Mhm.
faster, a speedier element that they were missing. I thought they really nailed it at the deadline. They are the team, to me, that if you're looking for a dark horse, plus 2,100 over on NorthStar Bets, the Lightning are the team to bet on.
Duclair's got 5 goals in 10 games to the Lightning, right? So again, he can put the puck in the back of the net. Let's go to the other big matchup in the NHL tonight. The I think now again, as much as I want my Canucks to go to the conference finals, what I saw last night um, did not give me any pause for cause for that. But I think the Western Conference Finals preview tonight is the Dallas Stars and the Edmonton Oilers. What do you see in this matchup? Of course, Connor McDavid's on this chase to win the Art Ross once again. The Oilers, lost in overtime to St. Louis, and Dallas just keeps on trucking along and trucking along. Am I right in this assessment that this is the most likely outcome for a Western Conference Final?
It's what I'm predicting. I
Yeah.
really do think you'll see these two teams in the end. Colorado, to me, has just been too inconsistent when you look
Mhm.
at their home road splits. They've really struggled away from Ball Arena, and you've got questions in net. Dallas, Ottinger, he's been hot and he's been not all year long, but I do think when push comes to shove, he's going to be just fine. The Oilers, they really, since December 1st, have been the best team in the league, and it's not going to get them a home ice advantage throughout the postseason. And I
Mhm.
do think they will have to go to Vancouver and they will have to go to Dallas to get to a cup final. But these are the two teams, Dallas and Edmonton, that I see duking it out when it's all said and done. They're both terrific hockey teams.
Mhm.
Tonight's game, I'm picking Dallas because I think it means a little bit more to Dallas. They see Colorado has given them a sliver of an opening here to win that division. And I expect them to lock it down. Edmonton really at a point of the season where there's not a whole lot to play for. I'd call it unlikely that they catch Vancouver. It would have to be a pretty magnificent run down the stretch with some
Mhm.
Vancouver struggles along the way. So I'm going to say Dallas, the hungrier team, gets the job done tonight. But a game I'm going to be tuning in for. I
Oh,
think
wow.
it's going to be an excellent game, and it wouldn't shock me if it went either way. But I will pick Dallas to win that game tonight against the Oilers.
1000%. Looking at it right now, both teams, are the top 5 in goals for per game. I think Dallas is third, Edmonton's fourth. Funny enough, the Leafs and the Lightning are both second and sixth in the league as well. So when I look at these teams, they're just so balanced, right? Now, again, the question of Stuart Skinner and net is a question, but he's played fairly well this year, right? He's had a majority of the workload. You have McDavid, Draisaitl. I expect Evander Kane to get going soon. Matthias Ekholm's had a very good year. Evan Bouchard as well. When I look at these two teams, they're on a collision course right now. I think the Canucks just don't have the depth on the wings to compete with these two teams, I feel. And let's face it, Elias Pettersson hasn't been that good since. JT Miller's been very good. Quinn Hughes had 2 goals last night, but since the All Star break, he hasn't, again, he set the bar so high. So it's been so hard for him to reach. And when I look at the Vancouver Canucks and when I look at the Edmonton Oilers, it's gonna be a situation where I just don't know if the Canucks can hold up against Draisaitl and McDavid, because Leon Draisaitl has even said himself, the Canucks left a bad taste in their mouth after punching them around earlier this season. So, and you mentioned the Oilers have been the best team in the NHL since December, and Dallas has just been so consistent over the last couple of years. So, I think both those teams right there are clear-cut favorites to be um, in the Western Conference Final. But aside from those games, do you have any other best bets or any best bets that you want to give other than the Lightning pick?
Honestly, I'm just going to be watching those two games. That's
Okay.
where I've put my bets for tonight.
All
I'm going
right.
to be rolling with Dallas and Tampa Bay to win tonight. They're the two best games on the slate. It's a good slate overall. It's a
Mhm.
short slate, but a good slate.
Yeah.
And those are the two games that I'm going to be rolling with, and the two bets I'm going to be putting down on tonight.
Well, Stevie, it's been a pleasure talking some football and some puck with you. We'll let you go and enjoy the hockey tonight, and we'll speak with you next week, my friend.
Sounds great, Justin. Thanks again for having me.